Welcome to the Not Old Better Show, Smithsonian Associates interview series on radio and podcast. The show covering all things health, wellness, culture, and more. The show for all of us who aren't old, we're better. Each week, we'll interview superstars, experts, and ordinary people doing extraordinary things, all related to this wonderful experience of getting better, not older. Now, here's your host, the award-winning Paul Vogelzang.
Thank you and welcome to the Not Old Better Show Smithsonian Associates interview series. I'm Paul Vogelzang. How often do you stop yourself and ask, yourself, what is my body trying to tell me? Most of us don't. We notice our bodies when something hurts, when we're tired, or when a doctor's test comes back with unexpected news. The rest of the time, we tend to push through our day and hope everything keeps working. Today's guest believes we are missing something important. Smithsonian Associate Dr. Giulia Enders, who's just a favorite of mine, a well-known physician and best-selling author, is joining us today. She'll be appearing at Smithsonian Associates coming up. Please check our show notes for more details about that. But Dr. Giulia Enders, a gastroenterologist, a physician who's changed the way millions of people think about the gut. Her first book showed us that our digestive system does far more than process food. It plays a role in our immune system, our metabolism, and even how we feel. Now, Dr. Giulia Enders is back with her new book, Organ Speak, and the conversation gets even bigger. You have to check this out at Smithsonian Associates, but we've got her today. We are going to be talking about all things health. Dr. Enders speaks to us today about her book. She looks beyond the gut and thinks about the remarkable teamwork that's happening inside us every second. Our muscles don't simply help us move. Our skin does more than cover us. Our immune system does more than fight infection. Each system is constantly gathering information, responding to change, and helping us adapt to the world around us from a health perspective. Much of what we will discuss today with Smithsonian Associate Dr. Giulia Enders comes from well-established biology. Some areas, particularly the relationship between our organs, emotions, and behavior, are active areas of research that scientists are continuing to explore. That's part of what makes this conversation so fascinating. We'll talk about why recovery in exercise, which we've talked about elsewhere, but we'll talk about why recovery may be just as important as exercise, why preserving muscle becomes increasingly important as we age, and what science tells us about touch and human connection, and why the simplest health habits continue to outperform many expensive trends. Dr. Giulia Enders is just a joy and wonderful to be speaking with. If you've ever wondered whether your body knows more than you give it credit for, I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. Dr. Giulia Enders, welcome to the Not Old Better Show. Dr. Giulia Enders, welcome to the program.
Hello, I'm happy to be here.
It's so nice to talk to you. You'll be speaking at Smithsonian Associates coming up. I am so excited to be talking to you in advance of that about your wonderful book, Organ Speak, what it really means to listen to our bodies. This is such a great subject. It really comes on the heels of your work and book about the gut. But the new book, Organ Speak, takes kind of a wider view, and you really look beyond the digestive system. What surprised you in that work, in that analysis, most about how all of these organs speak to one another and how they work together?
Well, I think I was surprised how everything is just linked so intricately. In med school, we usually learn about all these organs and systems sort of separately, individually. And then when I went into clinic and clinical practice, I saw that, well, everything is connected. And then there's all these things coming together. How we breathe influences our metabolism, for example. Our immune system is largely educated in the gut, but it will also then influence our mood and our thinking. There's things like skin contact having an influence on like nervous system activity, and many of these like influences on each other actually made me do medicine a little differently after a while.
Yeah, I just thought all this was fascinating. Was there one discovery throughout this process that changed the way you think about your own health?
I think there were many along the way. One was, for example, that I'm always a bit stressed when I travel and I arrive exhausted and I really need time to sleep. And I realized that what I do when I travel is that I just breathe kind of dysfunctionally. I breathe really quick, fast, and like a bit too deep. Like I'm just a bit of a nervous traveler. When I understood that many of these influences on how I feel come from just breathing too fast, I could focus on that a bit more and breathe slower. And by that, I just arrive more relaxed and refreshed. It is that simple sometimes. So that was one eye opener I had, and I was well over my 30s realizing this, and suddenly I travel differently. I thought that was kind of neat. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. I think one of the things that just caught my attention was this suggestion that you make that the brain isn't the sole decision maker. We often think of the brain as just this guidance system and it's working all the time, but it's really working alongside the rest of the body, which I think is really it's just a fascinating kind of concept. What does that look like, in everyday life? How does the brain kind of connect with our organs, speak to one another, and kind of make all this work?
Well, at first you have to realize that the brain is so isolated. It's in this bony skull, and it really does need information to put together a feeling of how we're doing. And it gets this information from all sorts of sources. The gut is a very big one because it collects data on, quality of our food, but also hormones and microbes and immune cells. But then it really also draws from skin. What is the skin telling us how we feel? What are the muscles doing? If muscles are active, the brain changes its chemistry quickly, actually. Much quicker than you would build up muscle. You change your brain through just movement. It doesn't even have to be exercise necessarily. And also things like just how fast you breathe will regulate centers in the brain that are responsible for how wakeful or even scared you are, or how relaxed you are and calm down. So there's quite a lot of these influences on how we think and how we feel, and oftentimes we just blend them out and start ruminating around why is it like this? Was it my neighbor who said something, or did I do something wrong? Am I? But the good thing is to just first check maybe your body also what it is telling to the brain, because that's what the brain uses as resources.
Oh, well, let's talk for a minute about the immune system and that it's just really much, much more than kind of this tool to fight infections. That it's working all the time too, speaking back and forth, and that it's weighing. Really, the way you put it, it's kind of weighing, making an assessment about what's safe for us and not. What does that teach us about the way that our bodies respond to things like stress and perhaps stressful travel, as an example?
Well, I think one aspect of this is that we have an influence of stress when it comes to immune function. So, of course, we see when we have acute stress for a short period of time, like let's say a day or two, then the immune system is downregulated and it's not so active and attacking everything. We release cortisol and stress hormones that do that. But then when we have chronic stress over a longer period of time, we see that actually the opposite happens. The immune system gets more aggressive and intolerant because it along us is searching for, whoever made us feel so ungood. And maybe it's also a physical source. So it's looking for this that is contributing to the stressful state that we're in. So in a way, you can understand the immune system as constantly on our side, by our side, and trying to find whatever is not doing us well. So this is an explanation on why stress is so influential on many diseases associated with immune function, like chronic inflammatory bowel disease or arthritis, for example. There's always one component is stress. I think one a bit more philosophical aspect to this that I also always like to look at was when we think about safety. What do we as a human being or just as a society think generates safety? And usually people would answer, well, taking away the bad stuff, defending us from the bad stuff. And that certainly is one component of being safe, also in the immune system. But when you then go to ask a body and an immune system, well, what do you understand under safety? And you look at the latest research since the 90s, you see it's actually much more than that. And actually, the larger component is really self-knowledge. The immune system has to know itself, has to know the body super well, and it never stops getting to know us until our very last day. It wanders around and checks out every cell and tries to always learn and if you want to say it like that, have new algorithms on what is good and what is not good. And with this curiosity come a lot of very interesting rules and regulations, but also tolerance, which is just equally as important as just defense, and also cooperation with good microbes. These things are very important pillars in the safety when you ask a human body. So it made me sometimes think about my own life if I'm regarding those aspects of safety enough or just trying to fend off the bad stuff. So those sometimes were questions I also enjoyed asking and wandering around.
When you talk about the immune system, you also bring up this really interesting corollary with the autoimmune diseases, and we hear about autoimmune diseases as being pervasive, and I'll give you my lay kind of sense as I was reading that you really kind of refer to the autoimmune system or autoimmune diseases rather as a way of being overly protective, almost taking it to the next level in terms of awareness. How does that help us understand some of these conditions, some of these autoimmune diseases that are occurring? Because they are often enormous and very difficult to treat.
They absolutely are. And that is maybe the first and important thing to say, they are a mistake. Our human body makes human mistakes. But then again, to really understand them better makes us be able to cooperate with the body and sometimes also, have a better healing. Because the old way of explaining these diseases, and it's still used to this day, is always saying, well, your immune system is attacking your own body. And this is really a very simplified and almost wrong version, I would say. Because when we look at later and more differentiated research, the only purpose of every single immune cell is to keep us safe. And some will step too far, do a little bit too much in order to do that. They will say, oh, this might not be right, so I'd rather just attack it just in case. And when they then do that with an own substance, of an own structure of our body, then this is when autoimmunity happens. So it's really being overprotective. It's a mistake we humans also make when it comes to our safety or the safety of our children.
Dr. Enders, of course, many of our listeners have heard the wonderful benefits of exercise being really one of the best things that we could all do, especially as we age. But I thought it was just fascinating that one of the things that you point out that happens with exercise is we can get even more benefits kind of after the exercise, after the workout, during recovery. What is it about recovery that's such an important part of the process and making our organs kind of speak so clearly to one another?
Well, really, almost all of the wonderful effects of exercise and sport happen after it and not during it. During it is quite a stressful time, actually. The temperature rises similar to having a fever. Your heart pounds. Your breath is accelerated as if you were in severe anxiety. It is a stressful time. But afterwards is what really makes it so special. It's when the muscles have the storage filled up and even a little bit more for the next time they're being challenged like that. It's when the nerve cells in the brain will actually have new connections to each other in order to facilitate the movements you wanted it to make a bit better, a bit smoother. It's when your lungs and your heart have the necessary growth to maintain this kind of movement and muscle activity in the coming days. So it's really when your body says, oh, you want to do all these movements? Let me see what I can do to make this even better or come true smoother for you. And so really, metabolically speaking, brain health speaking, immune function, all these things happen in the downtime. And I think it's a very interesting metaphor to growth and achievement in life also, because we always think it just happens during the activity part of it. But usually it really goes hand in hand. It needs those two halves. And in the muscle, that is very physically, openly to be seen that it is like that. And we have one phenomenon that I find also interesting, which is a parallel to burnout syndrome, I think. It is that when people exercise too much and they never have the downtime to restore the muscle and the regeneration, they, even though they train every day for hours, they get weaker over the course of a few weeks. So this is as similar to burnout, when people can't allow themselves to have this space to relax and just calm down and not be active, when then they suddenly start to actually decrease in productivity instead of increase. So I think it really goes to show that we have to see achievement and power and strength always as these dual thing of relaxation and activity.
When we think about exercise, we think about muscle, and you describe skeletal muscle as something that's just much more than helping us move. You really give us this profound sense that there's research that suggests that the skeletal muscle, is an active organ, and it communicates with the rest of our body as many of these other organs are doing. So why does that matter? Why is that communication with our skeletal muscle so important?
Well, muscle is just also a very big amount of our body weight. So it has quite the mass, and what it does matters. So when we, for example, let's say we have now these studies saying that having strength training could reduce anxiety in people, or can make you a little bit more stress resistant and, less irritable. There's one aspect to that, which is just very simple, which is glucose metabolism. Muscles store glucose, and then they are able to also give it off into our bloodstream slowly. So they're like a bit of a buffer. And we see that when people have high glucose spikes and then it all goes down, crashes very fast, it makes them a bit more nervous or a bit more irritated, for example. And muscle can smoothen this out. So one aspect of these nice effects of muscle training and strengthening is just by very plain physiological rules that we've known for quite some time, but that we're now connecting to mood, for example, and thinking. But then there's also the aspect that the muscle itself has a little bit of inflammation going when we challenge it. That's also a part of why our muscles feel sore when they're a bit inflamed. But doing that repeatedly will train the muscle to calm down inflammation faster and faster and regenerate faster. You get better at not having sore muscles all the time when you train regularly. And this also is important for the immune system, to have this partner to learn how to downregulate inflammation quicker, especially when we have, for example, a bad flu, or it was like that during the COVID pandemic, that it showed people who had regular exercise could then come off the inflammation state of the immune system a bit quicker, a bit more successful sometimes because of that mechanism. And as we know from the immune system's effect also again on thinking and feeling, this is an interesting ally to have, because, for example, one day before we get sick, some people get a bit whiny. They watch an animal documentary and they're like, oh my God, the bear. And you wonder, why did I react like that? I'm not usually so emotional. But the next day you get sick and you realize, oh, I was already on the verge of getting, a cold or something. So this is also where the muscle then has an interplay by, again, influencing the immune system. And then just growth of cells in the brain. We see that, for example, the reward system in the brain, the dopamine receptors, are upregulated after 1 hour of aerobic exercise. So you can it feels very good to go in the shower after exercise. It is really rewarding to have your meal in the evening because your dopamine is upregulated. Very nice side effect, but really understanding all these effects can make you feel different about using muscles, not just seeing it as an obligation that I have to do now. This is always what I like, when suddenly knowledge makes you feel it a bit different.
Of course, we're talking with Smithsonian Associate Dr. Giulia Enders about our new book, Organ Speak. And I hope you'll stay with us because we're about to move from understanding the body to putting that knowledge into practice. Really helpful stuff coming up. We'll discuss why recovery after exercise, maybe where some of the biggest health benefits actually happen, why muscle functions as much more than a way to stay strong, and what current research says about human touch, loneliness, and healthy aging. We'll also ask a question that affects almost everyone listening. With so much advice online, from supplements to cleanses to the latest health trend, how do you know what actually deserves your attention? That affects us all. These answers are just ahead, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more from Smithsonian Associate Dr. Giulia Enders. Please stay with us. Smithsonian Associate, Bestselling author, physician, Dr. Giulia Enders is our guest today. Dr. Enders has written the wonderful new book, Organs Speak, What It Really Means to Listen to Our Bodies. Thanks, Dr. Enders, for sharing the book with me. I just really enjoyed it. The reviews online are amazing. I also have to tell you, I really enjoyed some of the illustrations, and I know that your older sister Jill does some of that work for you, and I thought that the chapter 5 about the brain was great to show perhaps for my audience, because that, of course, is Jill and Giulia Enders. Chapter 5 talks about the wonderful relationship that the brain has, but it also talks about this wonderful relationship that you have with your sister, and that was just so nice to read about. You'll want to check out Dr. Enders' book, Organ Speak. Check out Dr. Enders' presentation at Smithsonian Associates. We'll put all of that information into our notes. But Dr. Enders, I just have a few more questions. We live in this very interesting time, certainly in the online world where there's just a massive amounts of information, almost too much at times, about supplement stacks, about detox plans, about health trackers, and just this endless advice online. Your message is so effective, and yet it's so straightforward too. I just really just valued it. It's sleep well, stay active, eat nourishing foods, and manage stress. Why do you think those basics are so often overlooked for all of the rest of the stuff that's going on out there online to try to help
Well,
us?
as you said already, they drown in the noise, and
Yeah,
also
yeah.
they are not new. But this is really the bulk. This is the 80% of our health, and sometimes I find it quite intriguing to make them feel differently, because for now many people just feel like it's these obligations. Yes, I know I have to sleep well. Yes, I know I have to exercise. Like all these things piling up on my shoulders in my everyday life with all the other obligations. So what I really always aspire to do is put knowledge together in a way that suddenly makes you feel different about using your muscles, or feel different about what sleep actually is, so that when you go to bed, it doesn't feel like this thing that you now also have to do perfectly since all of these health updates online. So I think this is why I really took these things that we in science and medicine know these are the most important things. Those are the pillars. They make the 80% of my health. And then I wanted to fill them up with a little bit of new knowledge and make them feel differently.
Yeah, it all does really work, just like the organs speaking to the body. And I think one of the ideas that I was really struck by as I was doing my research in preparation for our conversation today, you really talk about well-being as being not just something we experience in our minds, but in our bodies too, that there's a physical component to the well-being. And I wonder if you'd tell us a little bit about what you learned, what your research tells you about that connection.
I mean, in a way, it all started with me being so focused and interested in only the gut. This is my organ. I've always loved it. And I remember being so mind blown when about 12 years ago or so, I realized that it has all these influences on our mental health. It can influence anxiety, depression, but also stress resistancy and feeling joyful or remembering things well. There were all these studies popping up showing these effects. And I was flabbergasted, I think is the word you use. And I think now science has gone a little bit more in the way of having connections understood better again. So we see the influences of muscle, immunity, of breath, of human touch on the brain and all these things. But the funny part is really, when did we forget that we are physical human beings with the body? When did we start thinking that everything could just happen in the brain? This is sometimes, I think, even a bit more funny to me, And we have in Germany politicians bragging that they spent the whole night arguing around over big decisions and they needed no sleep or they could all stay awake. And I always think as a medical person, oh God, I really wish you had just slept and then did the rest in the morning. I want you to be well rested when you make important decisions, like forgetting the physical aspects of things and then bringing them back to the table is, I think, a very great opportunity and power of our time. Also with school, having actually all this knowledge that we have now from neuroscience and to put it into the classrooms, make the students learn way faster and easier and not be so frustrated because it's not cut towards them. And also work life could be managed quite a bit differently if we took the body into account a bit more. And relationships, very everyday topics, how we go about things. Just sometimes it's, for me, not about optimizing all the time, but it's about really having a smarter cooperation that then sometimes can really get you so much more.
I want to go a little bit further on that subject that you just made reference to, Dr. Enders, and that is the value of human touch, because I think that's such an important one to us, especially in this era of loneliness, something that we all seem to be experiencing. There's an epidemic of loneliness in the United States across all different ages, but certainly older men are feeling it a great deal. What is the physical connection really between kind of this idea of human touch and stress, and why have we kind of forgotten about that in some of these simple human connections and interactions?
I think we were just really busy with finding new interesting pills and combination of substances, to be honest,
Yeah,
and then turning back to
yeah,
something
yeah.
so fundamental, essential. Was maybe, was
Mm,
turning back.
mm,
It was also a weird new thing to do in science at times, I would say. And
mm.
essentially, the thing is just humans need each other, just like organs need each other to have this life and to make life happen. And when you look at the studies of the effects of human touch, sometimes they're even stronger than medication. We see that they calm down the nervous system. We have less stress hormones in the blood when we're being pleasantly touched by someone that we trust or feel close to. We reduce our heart rate, reduce breathing frequency. We can even see positive effects in people that don't like touch so much, like people with on the autism spectrum or people with ADHD sometimes don't, but still they profit of being touched gently by someone that they trust. We see it on intensive care units with people that are being, exposed to lots of stresses during their day in a very intensive setting. We see it with newborn babies who still 1 year after birth show better parameters of metabolism and stress resistancy when they've been touched right after birth. So it's quite miraculously to re-understand the effect of just human connectedness, I think. And then when we have the loneliness pandemic, as you mentioned, I think this is also something people can just keep in mind a little bit. If you've lost your spouse, then it's absolutely understandable that the person that you used to hold hands with or, sit comfortably on the couch, cuddle a little bit is gone, that your body suddenly has a lack of just calming touch sometimes. And people might go about this different ways. Some go to have a massage once a month if they can, or others help out with animals at a shelter or just have touch in ways that is okay to them and that still can do a little bit towards that lack of it.
One of the things that I think that happens as we develop some digestive symptoms, for example, is that we start throwing foods out of our diet. We begin to kind of react. Gluten may be kind of a gluten intolerance might be an example of that to a certain extent. You really make the case in the book, Organ Speak, that in fact our gut is even more resilient than we might even realize. And so what's reasonable for us to expect in terms of the gut's ability to heal, and when should we be careful about crossing that line and seeking medical evaluation? Because I think we want to absolutely err on that side and be caution, but we also want to make sure to remember that the gut is a powerful organ in itself and has some resilience properties.
Absolutely. I think there's a good 3-week rule of the thumb, you could say, where sometimes little disturbances like having an upset stomach or being a bit more bloated than you usually are, having a little bit of change in stool consistency, like these things. Sometimes, we have stress in life. We can't always eat perfectly. And sometimes these things have effects on us. And then there's always, I think, this time, 3 to 4 weeks when things can go back and then it's, you meet your balance again. Also, the cells in the gut have quite a high turnover. So actually they will renew the gut lining, every few days there's new cells coming and it's renewed all the time. So really, if something goes south a little bit, the gut has ways to find its way back. But then what should never be ignored for too long, are, of course, those general red flags that we have in medicine everywhere, which is like weight loss, night sweats, having a fever, an unexplained one for a longer time, having suddenly a color in your toilet like black or a bloody stool or gray is also a reason why you should really see a doctor as soon as you can. These are a few things where you should not wait for such a long time. Also, not being able to swallow. This can be something malignant, but it can also be a sort of a cramp of the esophagus, which then can be cured, sometimes only with peppermint oil, actually. But for some people, when the cramps are too hard, it has to be treated differently. But those are a few things where I'd say that's not under the 3 to 4 weeks rule.
Well, we sure appreciate your time, Dr. Enders. I really want to wrap up. I want to ask you a question about it. For those that are listening today, how do we pay better attention to our body talking to us? What is it that we need to do? And maybe just give us one simple habit that we can all start on, at least today or tomorrow, to understand that better.
I try to keep these things very light and doable because people have lots of responsibilities in a hectic day. I'm very well aware of that. So sometimes I propose things like just a tiny micro, like take 1 minute at 12 o'clock and 1 minute at 4 o'clock or another time that suits your day well. Just check. Just see how are my muscles. Am I clenching my jaw? How is actually my digestion? Did I eat something good? Do I feel tired? What is going on in my body? Just like as you would turn to a person that you would want to be considerate of, Or if that is not your thing, people can also use this already existing urge to check your phone. Like every other time that you have this urge to check your phone, try to check your insides, How am I doing? How fast am I breathing? Is my head ruminating or am I calm and actually can just sit for a minute? Try to just pay a little bit attention. In my experience, the body is very generous. And when it just gets 2 minutes more a day, you actually already feel that it is treated differently and it likes that. And I've had one very young patient who once, she was a bit like, she was very much into fairies and science fiction and all these things. And she said, every time I'm not looking around and looking at my phone, but actually focus on my body, it's like, suddenly the fairies are sitting down on my body. I thought it was
nice.
very romantic and sweet. But for some people, maybe that's also a good image.
That's a really lovely image. Thank you for sharing that. Smithsonian Associate Dr. Giulia Enders has been our guest today, author of Organ Speak, What It Really Means to Listen to Our Bodies, written so wonderfully by Dr. Enders, our guest today, illustrated by Gill Enders. We'll have links so that our audience can find out more information about Dr. Enders' work and about Dr. Enders' presentation at Smithsonian Associate. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time, Dr. Enders. We would love to have you back. I know our audience is just going to be just engaged and intrigued by all of your work, but we sure appreciate it. Congratulations on the book and all of your work. My best to you. I know we're catching up to you overseas, different time zones. We sure appreciate your patience with us. Sometimes these calls can be a little bit tricky, but you've just made it work. And the book is excellent. So my best to you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, Dr. Enders.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the talk. Thank you.
Of course. Dr. Giulia Enders, thank you for sharing your time and work with us. One of the things that stayed with me throughout this conversation is how often the body rewards the basics. Move regularly. Protect your sleep. Make time to recover. That's a biggie. Stay connected to other people. So important these days. Eat real food most of the time. None of those ideas are necessarily new. What continues to grow, though, is our understanding of why they matter and how deeply our body's systems work together to support our health. For those of us who want to live longer and live better, that's encouraging news. We don't have to chase every new trend. We can build lasting health by paying closer attention to the signals our bodies are already giving us and by making steady, practical choices every day. If today's conversation prompted you to think differently about your own health, please check out Dr. Giulia Enders' presentation at Smithsonian Associates. You're just going to love this. I would also encourage you to pick up Dr. Enders' new book, Organ Speak: What Really Matters When You Listen to Your Body and What That Means. We'll have links to all of this in our show notes, but read this book with some curiosity. Bring your questions to your healthcare team and see what speaks to your own experience. Check out the additional resources in our show notes today at notold-better.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone who would benefit from hearing it. Your recommendation helps us continue bringing trusted experts from Smithsonian Associates and practical conversations to adults who want to live healthier, stronger, and more purposeful lives. I'm Paul Vogelsang. This has been our Not Old Better Show Smithsonian Associates interview series. Please be well. Let's talk about better. The Not Old Better Show Smithsonian Associates interview series on radio and podcast. Thanks everybody for listening. And until next time, let's keep talking about better because growing older is inevitable, but living better is a choice. We can make this choice every single day. Thanks everybody. We'll talk to you soon.